the spring of 1891, New York City was gripped by fear. A savage murder in a seedy hotel room sparked a frenzy of speculation, tabloid hysteria, and whispers that the infamous Jack the Ripper had crossed the Atlantic. The case would come to be known, perhaps inaccurately, as the Red Jack murders, a chilling echo of the London killings that had shocked the world just 3 years prior. At the center of this dark chapter was the brutal slaying of Carrie Brown, a woman whose life and death were both steeped in tragedy. Carrie Brown, known in the Bowery by the nickname Old Shakespeare for her penchant for quoting dramatic verse, was a 57-year-old former housekeeper turned sex worker. Once employed in respectable homes, Brown had fallen on hard times. By the late 1880s, she was living in poverty, frequenting cheap hotels along the East River and selling sex to survive. Despite her difficult circumstances, those who knew her described her as talkative, friendly, and eccentric. She had once been a striking woman with auburn hair and sharp features, though years of hardship had weathered her appearance. Even so, Carrie retained an air of dignity and intelligence. She was said to have a theatrical flair, often reciting Shakespeare from memory to amuse bar patrons or hotel guests. Friends remembered her as someone who masked sorrow with bravado. Beneath her spirited persona, she carried the weight of disappointment, failed relationships, and declining health. Yet she remained fiercely independent and unwilling to accept charity. Her fall from grace was emblematic of the harsh social conditions faced by aging, impoverished women in Gilded Age New York, a world that offered few options once respectability was lost. On the morning of April the 24th, 1891, a hotel employee named Eddie Fitzgerald unlocked the door to room 31 of the East River Hotel. After receiving no response to his knocks, what he discovered inside would haunt him for the rest of his life. The air in the room was thick and musty. Carrie Brown's lifeless body lay sprawled on the bed, her torso grotesquely mutilated. Blood soaked the mattress and pooled onto the floorboards, forming a dark halo beneath her. The small, dimly lit room was in disarray. A chair had been overturned, and the thin, dirty curtains hung oddly on the windows, as if disturbed in a struggle. The walls, yellowed from years of tobacco smoke, seemed to close in with an eerie quiet. On the bed, beside Carrie's body, lay a bloodied carving knife, crudely wiped but unmistakably used in the attack. Her clothing had been torn, and several personal belongings, including a handbag and a comb, were scattered on the floor. Notably, there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the killer had been invited in, or at least expected. Witnesses remembered seeing Brown enter the hotel late the previous night with a man no one could later identify. According to night clerk George Brown, no relation, Carrie had been seen around 10 that night in the company of a man described as having a dark complexion and wearing a soft felt hat. He seemed quiet, and the two ascended the stairs without drawing much attention. Some guests later reported hearing a faint scuffle in the early morning hours, perhaps around 2 or 3 in the morning, but no one investigated. A smeared, bloody handprint was found on the wall near the door, and police collected a partial footprint near the bed. These small clues, however, would do little to bring the real killer to justice. The horror of the scene, its savage violence, and the unsettling familiarity to the London Ripper murders would quickly send New York into a spiral of fear and speculation. Amid mounting public pressure, the police arrested Amir Ben Ali, also known as Frenchie, an Algerian immigrant who worked odd jobs in the Bowery and sometimes slept at the East River Hotel. Police alleged that Ben Ali had bloodstains on his clothing and that he had been seen in the vicinity of the hotel. Amir Ben Ali had arrived in the United States several years prior, likely in the mid-1880s. He was believed to be in his early 30s at the time of the arrest. His English was limited, and he primarily communicated in French and Arabic. He had no known family in the United States, and little is recorded about his life before his immigration. He lived a transient lifestyle, taking up work where he could, washing dishes, carrying baggage, or cleaning rooms. What all immigrants do when they come to the land of milk and honey. By most accounts, he kept to himself, but was considered polite and quiet by those who interacted with him regularly. Hotel staff described him as a loner, not prone to drunkenness or violence. Some workers at the East River Hotel noted that he had a nervous disposition but was otherwise unremarkable. However, as an immigrant with few connections and limited language skills, Ben Ali made an easy target in a case desperately in need of resolution. When confronted by police, Ben Ali reportedly cried out, "Me kill woman? No, I do no such thing." The quote, carried in local newspapers, was used both to illustrate his confusion and his lack of fluency in English. Observers noted his visible fear and the language barrier that made his defense all the more difficult. There was no direct evidence linking him to the crime, no murder weapon, no eyewitness, and no clear motive. But in the fevered atmosphere of racial prejudice and public outrage, he was swiftly charged. The trial of Amir Ben Ali began in July 1891 and quickly became a media circus. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Francis Wellman, known for his sharp cross-examinations and flair for courtroom drama. The defense was headed by lawyer James Ridgway, who faced the uphill battle of defending an unpopular, foreign-born defendant in a city reeling from panic. The prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, including vague eyewitness accounts and questionable forensic analysis. Hotel staff testified they had seen Ben Ali near room 31 on the night of the murder, and a blood-stained shirt found in his possession was presented as damning proof. Wellman painted a vivid picture of Ben Ali as a lurking predator, preying on vulnerable women. His argument leaned more on performance and public fear than on fact. Nevertheless, he succeeded in persuading the jury that a conviction, even without direct evidence, was warranted for the sake of public safety. Defense attorney Ridgway worked to highlight inconsistencies in the prosecution's case and the lack of physical proof. He argued that Ben Ali had been railroaded due to his ethnicity and poverty, and he questioned the reliability of the blood evidence, which lacked scientific backing. Still, his efforts were largely overshadowed by the atmosphere of hysteria. In the end, the jury found Amir Ben Ali guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. Amir Ben Ali spent over a decade in prison before cracks began to appear in the case. Journalistic investigations and advocacy from reformers revealed flaws in the police investigation and possible coercion of witnesses. In 1902, New York Governor Benjamin Odell reviewed the case and, citing new evidence and the weak nature of the original prosecution, granted Ben Ali a pardon. He was released after 11 years behind bars. What became of him afterward remains largely unknown. He faded from public record, a free man but forever marked by the hysteria that had made him a scapegoat. The murder of Carrie Brown remains officially unsolved. historians continue to debate whether it was truly the work of the Ripper, a copycat, or simply a crime of opportunity fueled by social decay and desperation. Some have speculated that a known serial offender could have been responsible, though no definitive link has been made. What is clear is that the Red Jack hysteria revealed much about the anxieties of the age, fears of immigration, urban crime, female sexuality, and the limits of law enforcement in a rapidly modernizing society. The case reflected how quickly public panic could lead to injustice, and how easily the vulnerable could be both victims and villains in the public imagination. Today, the Red Jack murder endures as a chilling footnote in American crime history, a brutal mystery at the dawn of modern sensational journalism, and a cautionary tale about the high cost of fear-driven justice. So what say you? I would love to hear your comments.